Everyone, welcome to our committee meetings. First off is administration rules. Mr. Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Terry Pryor, Chair of this committee. Councilman Boykin, Councilman Honeycutt, and Councilmember Middleton sits on this along with our chair. We have 3 items. The first item is 1A, enacting electronic meeting procedures request to consider during emergency. What is the pleasure?
Would move for approval. Is that staff recommendation for A?
Yes, staff recommendation.
Move for staff recommendation.
Okay. Second. All right, any discussion? Well, staff, would you tell Mr. Moody what is your recommendation?
Do you want me to?
Yes, ma'am.
This is the rule that you all requested to allow the chairman to have the authority to enact electronic meeting procedures during an emergency situation. If you all are unable to gather a quorum of council in person, the chairman would have the authority to enact those electronic meeting procedures.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Moody? Oh, thank you. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Item 1B, amendment to Rule 4.2 quorum of committees.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. 1C is attendance VIA video conference request to consider.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Just for clarification, I think we've discussed this in prior meetings, but it needed further clarification that any attendance would require a quorum physically present, and that the chairman or whoever's chairing the meeting must also be physically present,
Right.
in addition to having those 2 meetings that a person could attend virtually and vote per year. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
All right. Well, then I would move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay, the ayes have it. That concludes our Administrative Policy Rules Committee agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Next up is Planning Public Works, chaired by Mr. Moody.
Sass, all members of council are voting members of Planning and Public Works. Item 1, ZLDR amendments. Ms.
Mr.
Honeycutt.
Chairman, yes,
ma'am.
I'd like to move to approve items 1C, 1D, 1E, and 1F, which I believe were all approved by Planning Commission.
Second.
1C, 1
E, and F.
1C, C, D, E, and F has been moved and seconded.
E, and F. Okay.
Any discussion? Mr. Kabrowski.
You're talking about E, you're talking about the tree ordinance, correct? I strongly oppose the changes. I feel some of us, look at, I think I speak for
That's
most
not
of-
it.
That's not this one.
Okay, what you
Sorry,
talking
then.
about?
Okay,
This is just C, D, E, and F.
okay.
Anybody else? All in favor of Ms. Honeycutt's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Nay.
And
There
Mr.
was
Chairman,
One nay, sorry, 8 ayes, 1 nay, Mr. Kabrowski. Ms. Honeycutt.
I'd like to move for items 1A and 1G to go back to Planning Commission to discuss the changes that we have discussed publicly. I believe the Planning Director, Mr. Evans, may have some information so that the public can be aware. 2 that I mentioned at our last meeting were the fact that we do need to add the limited site plan review back to any public works project that's going forward, as well as tree mitigation for transportation or road projects. There may be some other recommendations from staff, but we've discussed those publicly. We'd like the Planning Commission to consider these amendments with these revisions. Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Mrs. Honeycutt. It's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Reverend Middleton. Thank you. Mr. Evans.
Sure, yeah, just for what Councilmember Honeycutt was discussing, there was some requests, I believe, from council members to look at this again. We have gave our first effort draft on some changes that could occur in this particular amendment. They're highlighted here in yellow, where basically would be proposing to rewrite numbers 3 and 4 of this particular amendment, and adding in limited site plan review, tree protection, tree surveys, only, and exemptions only when they're presented to county council. So that's what we would like to take back to planning commission for their consideration.
That's the one you said.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Questions before you go? Questions, Mr. Pryor?
So the city and the state doesn't require what we are trying to do right now. Is that correct?
So I think, if I understand your question, Councilmember Pryor, the state is exempt from the tree ordinance.
Yes.
By statute, basically, and the municipalities have adopted a similar ordinance as this one.
Okay.
Where the their councils could have the authority to approve the removal for public work.
And lastly, everything that Public Works not approves, but design will have to come to county council for final approval, correct?
That's correct. This exemption would only apply when the project is presented before county council with the tree surveys, the
Okay.
trees that are going to be removed, the species and the sizes of the trees.
And lastly, I want to make this perfectly clear, this is only for road projects, not subdivisions, not developers, this is only for road projects.
Well, road and drainage.
Road and drainage.
Yes,
But
yes.
it does not include developers, correct?
Correct. That's
I want to
correct.
clarify that so there won't be no misinformation.
That's correct.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Additional questions? Mr. Grabowski?
My preference would be to vote on it tonight and vote it down. I think that, I speak for many of us, I know when I ran for this, I went door to door for months. Many of us feel that we lose every day part of what makes living here special. The trees and the canopy are part of that. I think we lose some of who we are, and we ought to be humble in what we give ourselves. I feel that the run for county council is a very expensive, large areas that we run for. I'd rather have a filter through the planning commission or the board of zoning appeals. When you run for county council, you're subject to large donations from developers, contractors. Some of us represent developers and contractors. There's a whole nother level. I don't think we should give away one more level of intervention and losing things that are germane to all of us. I'd rather keep what we have and not do these changes and put at risk the loss of our canopies and trees, which makes a unique and special for living here. And I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. My preference would make a motion tonight to vote it down.
Comments? I have a question. Mr. Thigpen, this has been largely about trees. You guys do a little drainage work, don't you?
Yes, sir, we do drainage work all over Charleston County.
You bring in a project that's in my district on Captiva Road up in, I think, a couple of weeks where there's been drainage that's filled in a new neighborhood. The settlement probably contributed to that, but Captiva Road is flooding now and could come into homes at some point. What if there was a tree in the way of you doing that work? We just let the people flood, suffer?
Currently, we would have to go through the process of going to the BZA, which would slow us down a few months to get the approval from the BZA to be able to take that tree down.
Okay, so this is equally about drainage as it is about trees.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, I have one quick question for him after.
Yes, sir. Mr. Werman.
I mean, I don't have any particular issue with it going back, but I do think that we should keep in mind, maybe to counter Chairman Moody's point, that it's my understanding that this has come up like 11 times over the last 10 years. Am I correct in understanding that?
I do not remember the numbers from which planning department presented last time.
Someone might.
So there have been 5 times since 2010 that Public Works Department has come to BZA for tree removal, and all times were approved with conditions.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that information. And I would just make the point moving forward that I certainly think that public capacity is important. And you know, I might think a little bit differently on this issue if those numbers were a little different. But I also take Councilman Moody's point that delay, even if it is being approved, is an impactful thing. But I do just want to point out that the risk of that happening, we do have some data on it, and it suggests it's pretty rare. So,
I just want to make a couple of points. This is narrowly confined to our Public Works Department for drainage and road easements only. Nothing more, nothing less. I would advise council that neither Dorchester County nor Berkeley County have any such encumbrances on their Public Works Departments to send them to the BZA. Additionally, 3 of the 4 largest municipalities in South Carolina located in Charleston County, the town of Mount Pleasant, City of Charleston, City of North Charleston, also do not send their public works to the BZA. Having been on the BZA for 4 years, 2 years as the vice chair, we had these kinds of cases come up, and I want to get into the weeds since we're going there. There are 7 criteria that the BZA has to consider when approving a variance. One of them is, and you have to answer yes to all these questions, the need for the variance was not caused by the applicant's own actions. Any road project or drainage easement is going to be caused by the will of county council. There's no way to answer that question yes if we're being truthful. Secondly, a denial of the variance would create an unreasonable restriction on the use of the property. There's no way a BZA member can answer that question yes on a public roads project or public drainage. It can be used for residential, agriculture, forestry, on and on and on. Put a house on it. These criteria were mainly put there for private development of private property for our zoning ordinances. They're set by state law. There's a reason these other municipalities and other counties don't do this, because it's in conflict. It was not what the BZA's job was. Several of the cases I voted on in that body, one was for Santee Cooper, the other was for the mitigation bank down on Wamalaw. They didn't meet the criteria of the variances, plain and simple. Didn't matter if you thought the project was good or not, that didn't matter. They are bound by the criteria. And the way that we go about roads projects and drainage projects, where we have to identify the property needed, have all the planning done, engineering, and then we have to decide whether we're going to purchase the property or go through eminent domain and condemnation, we wind up owning the property before we ever go to the BZA. This is a cart and horse question. And in the end of all this, the county, Charleston County, could be suing the Board of Zoning Appeals, spending taxpayer dollars of one part of the county suing the other. That's the reason these other governmental entities don't set themselves up for this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boykin.
One quick
One final comment, Mr. Grassley.
final conversation. I just like to make it public, and my position as a member of county council, and people need to know, I feel this is part and parcel with the changes enacted or wanting to be enacted in the Historic Preservation Commission. We're helping to ease the way to lose what is most precious and valuable about our communities, whether it's the historic settlement communities or our canopy and our trees. And I think what I'm hearing now is to do away with the Board of Zoning Appeals. There's a reason that it exists. I don't see having public participation and extra layers that protect what makes us unique and special. It's what's worth living here, and a lot of people love. It's the best form of public art is our trees. It's not, and I just, the ambiance it creates, I don't see, in both with this and the historic preservation, nothing in state law has changed one iota that necessitate these changes. And if Charleston's different than the rest of the counties, I don't know that that's a problem for me. We're unique in many ways. I don't mind one more uniqueness. If this is preserving our beauty and natural landscape, I say it's worth preserving, and I would be strongly against these changes.
Thank you, Mr. Borowski. Ms. Honeycutt.
Yeah, just to follow up, I want to, thank Joe for his years of service on the BZA, his unique understanding of this issue that none of us really understood until he brought it up to us, and to say that we are absolutely in no way trying to undermine the BZA. We understand that it is important to seek a variance. It's just a practical matter that county council is not able to meet the criteria set forth in state law and our own ordinances. This is just one of those issues we needed procedural clarification on. We're helping streamline the process, and To create a better public process, we are sending it back to Planning Commission to consider again with these revisions so that the public has the opportunity to input. And I did want to make one quick comment because she spoke to us before. She's not well tonight, so couldn't be here, but Ashley Dane has worked extremely hard on this. She's consulted with us, talked to our zoning department. She helped start a petition that's driven a lot of the energy around this, and we appreciate that public input. And so at this point, I'd like to call the question.
Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt. All those in favor please, of the motion for A and G as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Nay. Mr. Darby, Mr. Grosky, Mr. Werman are noes. Everybody else aye. We have one remaining item, that's 1B.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Boykin.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve it, but approve it with the following amendment, is that we strike section C5 from the amendment.
Second.
Noted and seconded. Can you,
Can we get
Mr. Boykin, yeah, I was
an
going to say, would
explanation
you,
on
would
this
you
from
elaborate on this
staff?
a little bit?
So basically, this is establishing the requirements or restrictions on private boarding stables in the Ag Preservation District, and I think there's an RR district in there also. And this was a limitation to a maximum of only 10 horses being allowed. But also in this amendment, it also limits it to 1 horse per half acre of property. And being that that's a reasonable restriction, it'd be redundant to put a cap on it at 10 horses because you have a lot larger properties that can accommodate much more than 10 horses.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
My question is, Sue, you know, several years ago, we had some folks complaining about these folks putting these horse stables more or less right next to their houses, and they can smell this stuff. You know, is this going to change what we have already enacted? Because if it's going to cause problems to the neighbors, to whereas, you know, somebody is right here, but just because we change the ordinance, these folks can bring more horses in and cause them more harm and more danger, and that's something, you know, I can't support.
This is going to be pretty much in the rural areas, and
Yeah.
it's going to be like 99% of the zoning's ag. So it's not going into, you know, urban areas. I think, Mr. Evans, is it RR, what is it? There's one RR section that's by special exception?
I believe so. Let me get back to, get back to the table. So it would be a use with conditions in RM through RR and in RC and allowed in CC, RI, and industrial, community, commercial, or rural industrial and industrial.
While I've got you up there real quickly, would you go over the buffer requirements and all the other things to Mr. Pryor's point?
Yeah, so the buffer requirements would not kick in unless it was a commercial stable, that was a commercial operation, that was open to the public, to the general public, to have commercial horse equestrian events, that type of thing. That's when the buffering requirement would come in. The reason why this was something that staff had seen as a need for as well, there was not a differentiation, there was not an intermediary step between a private stable and a commercial stable. So it didn't matter how many horses that you were boarding for friends or for your neighbors or whatever, or acquaintances. We considered that commercial, which kicked in a bunch of regulatory requirements such as buffers and things like that, that were making it difficult for folks in the rural area to utilize their property for equestrian purposes.
May I add, is that also, again, a way to induce folks that have ag property to try to be able to raise revenue from the use of an ag pursuit?
That is exactly right, yes. We're trying to provide an avenue to fill a need.
For Mr. Pryor.
Right. One more question. So several years ago, there was a gentleman that wanted to do just what I think Mr. Boykin is talking about. He had those horses for the kids who were, mentally challenged and disabled. And I think we took them through a process, with the planning and the zoning, and there was initially a lawsuit filed. And so how is this going to affect, if this guy comes back now and says, well, y'all changed these laws after y'all put me through all this, I want my money back. That's just a question I'm asking, because it seems like we put him through all this stringent, zoning and what he couldn't and couldn't do on his own property when he was keeping these horses, and now we're going back to what we told him he couldn't do.
So this is only for new applicants that are trying to do this now. This would not be retroactive to any other,
So if he wanted to come back and do what he was trying to do, he would be able to do it now as a new applicant.
he would be able to do it as long as he met the conditions and the requirements for this new category of horse boarding.
And real quickly, that type of activity would be considered commercial stables,
Yeah.
not private horse boarding.
Right.
That's the difference.
I'm not triggering exactly what Councilmember Pryor is saying, but if it's either going to be a commercial stable or a private stable, or if this ordinance passes, there's this new boarding stable, which is not commercial.
Okay, so this ordinance is not commercial.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. Sass, that concludes our Planning and Public Works meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Great job. Next up, Finance Committee. We're removing item 2A regarding state accommodations tax allocations from the agenda, and it will come back on a future agenda. Number 1, presentations. Jordy Yarborough with the State Ports Authority is here to make a presentation. Ms. Yarborough?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Jordy Yarborough, South Carolina Ports Authority. Thank you for having me this evening to give you a brief update and share with you, you have it there on your desk, our 2023 annual report. There are also some on the back table for those that are here in attendance. Just wanted to pull a couple of items from the report to share with you tonight. Of course, the report has our full financials, volumes, letters from our chair board, and our CEO. So the South Carolina State Ports Authority is state-owned public enterprise, and any successful public enterprise, of course, has a clear set strategic priorities and values that we operate under. Ours, of course, are itemized here as advancing our operational excellence, growing and anchor our cargo base. That's where our partnership with the county is very important. Thank you for that. Delivering critical infrastructure and caring for our port team members. So we recently had our economic impact study updated. This is a study that's conducted by Dr. Joey Von Nessen with the USC Darla-Moore School of Business, so an independent study. We now have a significant increase since it was last updated in 2019, I believe it was. We're now showing 1 in 9 jobs in the state of South Carolina are directly tied to the port, and a whopping $86.7 billion annual economic impact. I'll note here again, as a state-owned and operated entity, while we don't directly pay taxes, our operations generate $1.5 billion annually for the state, so a significant return on investment for the state. A couple of highlights of our capital expenditures in the year. We invested $127 million in critical port infrastructure. The big project we have under construction now and here in the county is the Navy-based intermodal facility. That's adjacent to the Hugh Leatherman terminal at a $400 million investment. It's under construction and is due to be completed in 2025. Connected to that is a barge operation that's an additional $150 million that will connect and allow containers to be drayed across by barge from the Wando Welsh terminal to the Leatherman terminal, then transferred by a private drayage road to the new intermodal facility, taking roughly about 200,000 truck trips off of 526 annually when that gets in place. Also, we've invested heavily in our inland port Greer, big success story there with just being open for 10 years, already under expansion there. And you may see around town our new smart chassis pool. It's the shiny blue new ones with the white mud flaps with our logo on them. Happy to report the Charleston Harbor deepening project is complete. We are the deepest harbor on the East Coast, giving us a significant advantage from our competitor ports. At 52 feet, the ships can pass each other without tidal restrictions, and actually can pass each other with the widening that's associated with that project as well there in the Charleston Harbor. One of the things that I'm most proud of that I get to oversee is our Port Ambassador program. This is it's a program that's designed to give a behind-the-scenes look at port operations. It's a wonderful program. I'm thrilled this year that the county's attorney, Natalie Ham, is amongst the class. This is last year's class. Really, the idea here is, as a publicly owned entity, our stakeholders are the citizens of South Carolina, and in order to better educate the citizens, this program was implemented to help leaders in our community know more about the port and share that back in their line of work and in their areas of leadership. And then lastly, I have the community giving program to highlight for anyone that's not familiar with this, and I encourage any not-for-profits that are listening. This is an annual grants program that we offer. We closed out applications, and we're actually getting ready to announce this year's awards. Last year, we donated $252,000 to charities throughout the state, as a matter of fact. So if you missed out this year, anyone that's interested, next year we'll open for applications in the June, July timeframe, and then make the announcements before the end of the year. So, Mr. Chairman, that's really all I had to share with you all this evening. Again, just like to come to speak to you annually, make sure you're well abreast of what we're doing at the port. Happy to answer any questions if you have any at this time.
Anyone have any questions?
Just a comment. Ms. Yarbrough, I just want to thank you again for your kind generosity of letting me come over and tour the port, one of the highlights of my year. And thank you all for what y'all do for us at the port.
Thank you, Mr. Boykin. Yes, and if any members have not been out for a tour of the terminal, my card is there on the annual report. I'd love to have you out. And if you're not scared of heights, I'll take you up in the crane. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Hearing none?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Yarbrough. We sure appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Transportation sales update. Alex Oziak.
All right, good evening. My name is Alex Oziak. I'm Engineering Manager with Public Works. I'm here this evening to provide a brief update on some of our featured projects from our second transportation sales tax and provide you with an update on our efforts so far to date towards a third transportation sales tax. This first slide here represents a timeline of our current sales tax programs as well as the featured projects that were included as part of the second transportation sales tax. As you can see by the red line, we're making some good progress on executing these projects. And with the exception of just a few, we anticipate completion on most projects within the next 4 years. Next, I'd like to give you some information and some more details on some of these featured projects, and we're going to start off with some that are currently under construction. First is our Glen McConnell Parkway widening project. Our contractor has completed the majority of the work on the new westbound travel lane and is currently approaching completion on Phase 2 of the project, which includes additional eastbound travel lane, along with the associated intersection improvements and drainage work. Currently working on prep work for construction of the shared use path, which will be adjacent to the eastbound travel lanes. Construction is anticipated to be substantially completed towards the end of the first quarter of '24. And I've also got a short video here kind of showing the construction progress. All right, next is our Northern Pitchfork project. This was initially split up into 2 phases, with Phase 1 doing the construction from Maybank out to the entrance to the Stono Oaks Apartments, which has been mostly completed except for the final asphalt layer. Right now we're working on Phase 2, which takes us from the Stono Oaks Apartments out to River Road. Right now we just got some remaining work on the curb and gutter, sidewalk, and base pavement, which is expected to be completed towards the end of the year. We're currently working with our contractor on a change order for the restriping of westbound Maybank Highway at the intersection of River Road, as well as the deletion of a proposed left turn lane at the intersection of the Pitchfork and River Road. Currently, we anticipate project completion and opening the roadway to traffic at the end of the first quarter of '24. We've recently started construction on the Palmetto Commerce Interchange project, which will reduce congestion at the surrounding intersections, improve access to existing and planned developments, as well as increase mobility in the I-26 Ashley Phosphate area. Construction kicked off back in August, and we are anticipating substantial completion of this project in February of '26. We should start pile driving for the bridge foundations next month, and we'll be holding a community meeting next Tuesday. Our Main Road Segment A project extends from Bees Ferry out to River Road, including a grade-separated interchange at US 17. Currently, our right-of-way agents are working to secure the remaining right-of-way, and we are expecting a decision from the Army Corps of Engineers regarding our environmental permit in the first quarter of '24. We are planning on awarding the design-build contract for the project in the third quarter of '24, with construction starting before the end of the year. Substantial completion for this project is anticipated in the fourth quarter of '28. We're also making progress on our Main Road Segment C project, which will improve Main Road and Bohicket Road from Maybank Highway to Betsy Carson Parkway. Currently, we're scheduling a public meeting on this project for January 18th to present our preferred alternative and receive public comments. Following that meeting, we'll be working to further refine plans for 30% design and working towards submittal of our Army Corps of Engineers permit. Next major milestone for this will be beginning a right-of-way acquisition process, which is anticipated to start the second quarter of 2025. Next, I'd also like to give you a kind of brief update on some of these other projects we got going on that are in the design phase right now. For our SC41 project, we have an interim improvement project that's currently out for bid. Bids are due back on this one on December 15th. The larger corridor product was submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers for permitting back in May, and we anticipate receiving that permit in the summer of next year. For our Airport Road Connector project, we have submitted the environmental assessment document to the Federal Highway Administration and hoping to get a finding of no significant impact and hold a public hearing in the summer of '24. For our Palmetto Commerce Parkway Phase 3 project, we are continuing to work with Joint Base Charleston towards easement acquisitions and trying to meet and address their restrictions. We have tentatively scheduled a public update meeting on this project for the second quarter of '24. For our James Island intersection project, this is actually 4 different projects all wrapped up into one. We have for the Camp Road in Fort Johnson, we have started the right-of-way acquisition process and plan to advertise this project towards the end of the first quarter of '24. For the Central Park in Riverland, this project is also in the right-of-way acquisition phase, and we anticipate advertisement of that project in late '24. For the Folly Road Complete Streets project, we are currently working through the eminent domain process on the last remaining tracks and look towards advertisement of that project the first quarter of '24. For Fort Johnson Sessionville, and we are preparing the invitation for bid for this project, and we'll be advertising this most likely January of '24. For the Savannah Highway capacity and intersection improvements, this is actually covering 3 major intersections. Right now, we've completed 30% design plans for the DuPont-Stinson intersection, as well as the Wapu Road intersection, and we're working towards right-of-way plans. For the Avondale area, the city is working to acquire the necessary right-of-way for that project, and once they've secured that, we anticipate holding another public meeting probably mid-24 on that project. For our US 78 project, we're working on conceptual design alternatives. Anticipate holding a public meeting in April to solicit some public feedback. And lastly, for the Dorchester Road improvements, we're currently working again on some conceptual design layouts and also working with Joint Base Charleston to kind of address their concerns. We have a public meeting tentatively scheduled on this project for the second quarter of '24. Okay, next I wanted to kind of give you a brief on staff efforts to date towards a potential third transportation sales tax. And I wanted to start off actually with a little bit of history regarding our current sales tax programs. The first transportation sales tax was approved by voters back in the fall of 2004 for a half-cent sales increase on purchases, and that endured for about 25 years until $1.3 billion was collected. However, currently, collections are forecasted to reach that $1.3 billion threshold by the end of FY26. For our second transportation sales tax, this was approved by voters back in the fall of 2016. This was for an additional half-cent sales tax, and that ran for, again, 25 years or until $2.1 billion is collected. Right now, collections began in FY 2017 and are forecasted to extend until FY 42. Back in February, Council directed staff to research and outline a reasonable financial approach to fund the Mark Clark extension. And after some deliberation, staff determined that continuation of the transportation sales tax program was probably the best approach to acquire the necessary funding for that project. At the May Finance Committee meeting, Chairman Sass requested staff begin formulating a plan for the 2024 transportation sales tax. So this third transportation sales tax, if it's approved by the voters in the fall of 24, it would not impose any additional tax. It would actually be a continuation of the first transportation sales tax and continue with that half-cent sales tax collection. We would look to continue again for a period of 25 years, and this would start in FY 27 and continue out to FY 52. Right now, we're forecasting this tax could possibly collect up to $5.4 billion in revenue, which would be utilized to fund transportation infrastructure improvements, mass transit, and the county's Greenbelt program. Starting back in June, staff began engaging with the BCD COG, SCDOT, and the surrounding municipalities to gain an understanding of their future transportation needs and priorities. Similar to what we did with the second sales tax, we envisioned holding a series of 5 public meetings throughout the county to present these potential projects and solicit public comments, as well as host a website to further collect comments online. My last slide here kind of shows our proposed timeline moving forward, with public meetings tentatively scheduled to be held towards the end of late January through the end of February, and utilizing the month of March to try to analyze and incorporate that public input and finalize a list of featured projects for inclusion with the third sales tax. We'd look to present that list with a series of readings through council through April and July, and with the final language for the referendum would be due to the Board of Elections by August 15th for inclusion on the November 24 ballot. And with that, that ends my presentation, and I'd be happy to address any questions.
Are there any questions? Mr. Kabrowski?
Well, first, I want to thank you for your excellent presentation. I've rarely seen anything so clearly delineated and understandable, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I know that you talked about the third transportation sales tax, and you listed projects in Glen McConnell, Maybank Highway, Beast Ferry Road, Savannah Highway, and all the James Island things. This board allocated $75 million for appraisals and right-of-way for the extension of 526. And at 526, nobody knows what will happen on that referendum. We don't know. Nobody can determine whether it's going to pass or not. For that $75 million, what could you do to improve if we would instead or used it for Glen McConnell, Maybank, Beast Ferry Road, Savage, Savannah Highway, and James Island? Could that money been used to kind of directly impact traffic woes in James Island and Johns Island? What would $75 million have meant?
Sir, the project I mentioned earlier, like you mentioned, Beast Ferry, Maybank, and things like that, those are actually included as part of the second transportation sales tax and are already funded through that program.
But for your understanding of that, are there other things that could have been done to increase the flow of traffic for $75 million with your knowledge of how those are improving? What would additional $75 million do?
Certainly, we could use $75 million to improve traffic flow and utilize on other projects. I will say we have seen historical cost increases on construction projects. In fact, the analysis we've done has shown over the last about 2 years, we've seen a 53% increase in construction costs. So I will say $75 million certainly doesn't go as far as it used to.
Councilmember,
To most of us, thank you.
Councilmember, we would really have to study that in more detail to find out, to give you exactly what the money could be spent for.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thickman.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
if Mr. Kabrowski is finished.
I am.
Very much, and thank you again, Mr. Oziak, for the stellar presentation. As I look at this last slide, my mind flashes back in just hopes that we could have had something like this for the Affordable Housing Trust and for our housing initiatives to then be teed up for the ballot the last time, but I flash back just looking at this fine presentation that staff can provide under direction. Wanted to go back to the Glenn McConnell widening project, which is, particularly in my area, and I travel this road every day,
Yes.
going and coming, and certainly based on the video that you played just a while ago, that certainly must have been at an optimal time of day that you recorded that video.
Yes.
Because when I leave home early in the morning, I'm thronged in traffic, and by the time I go back home, I'm still in the same traffic. And I do appreciate all of the widening efforts, and certainly see the vision and support that 1,000%. And also recognize all of the development and the potential for future development, particularly at that West Ashley Circle area, the Bees Ferry Road corridor, and Glenn McConnell, still yet to be untapped, because there seems to be unlimited potential for dense development in that area. When you turn onto Bees Ferry Road, going toward Highway 17, again, there's more and more development all across and around that area. My nightmare, as I go and come, because again, I travel this road every day, my nightmare becomes, even with the widening improvements, and I would have to be reminded as to when this road is scheduled, or the grade it would receive once all of this is done. But I don't know if we contemplated all of the development that is now taking place and to take place since this has been done. And my fear is that even with the improvements that we made in order to fix the problem that existed a few years ago, this road, even when completed, is already going to fail. And so can you tell me, or anybody, Mr. Thig, can anyone tell me, because again, this is my daily life, and not only mine, but all of those who live on that side of town. And I would love for improvements to really relieve the burdens that we're experiencing. And if then at the end, we will just end up in the same position we were in the beginning, then what's next?
Councilman Middleton, as part of the planning process for these larger projects, what we do is we look at what the existing traffic volumes are, and we work with the planning, with the COG, and with the city and the county to look at what they foresee as the development over the next 20 years. And we try to develop plans that should handle the traffic over the next 20 years.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And going to the other side with Savannah Highway capacity intersection improvement.
Yes.
You did say that around mid-2024, because I did promise that community, particularly in Avondale, Burns Downs, collectively us, that we would come back to them. I did recognize you reaffirming that the city, based on agreements that we discussed throughout this project, would be acquiring those right-of-ways, and you say that all of that is on track and moving in a good
It's
direction?
on track and moving forward. I will say it's maybe moving a little slower than we had originally
Right.
anticipated, but that's why we likely pushed back that meeting till mid-24 rather than the beginning of the year.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Darby?
Mr. Sass, good afternoon, sir. Mr. Boykin, how you doing, sir?
Fine, sir.
I'd like to use your metaphor of putting the cart before the horse. And just to piggyback off Mr. Gabrowski, I wanted him to take it a little deeper, because I really didn't want to say anything tonight in reference to the $75 million that's committed to 526. I spoke to a very distinguished constituent today, and he espoused his concern about the 75 million. And I wish I could take credit for what he said, but he said, Darby, it's almost like going to the bank to borrow $75 million. And the loan officer said, how are you going to repay it? And the man says, well, when I win the lottery, I'll pay you back.
Mm-hmm.
We commit the $75 million to 526. What if the voter says we reject it? Then what? Well, what do we do with the $75 million then? If the voter says we don't want it? I mean, do we have those kind of dollars that the county could really afford? It's just a basic question. And I'm not saying that to be ostentatious or to be arrogant or anything of that nature, not at all. But it's just a basic question. And I do appreciate the metaphor or the analogy, Mr. Boykin. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Darby. Mr. Boykin?
I guess what I'd say, Mr. Darby, is a couple of things. Before I got here, council entered into a 3-part contract with the State Infrastructure Bank and the South Carolina Department of Transportation. Ms. Ham can go over the details of that contract. It's a public document. But if I'm not mistaken, we are bound to respond when DOT makes a request for money, as they did. They needed $150 million, that to be split in half between us and the State Infrastructure Bank. We have honored our part of that contract. Had we chosen not to do that, I would presume we'd be in default. Part of that contract says that any monies expended by the Infrastructure Bank up to this point, if we were found to be in default, they can come back and claim 50% from us and we'd be liable to pay it. I didn't write the contract, didn't sign it, but it is a contract and it is binding. Also in that contract, it goes back to the very beginning of it that said, the county said that we would raise the money through a referendum. So we are staying the course and we're doing exactly what was required by that contract, and it was good enough for the State Infrastructure Bank to join us and also SCDOT. Not going to get into the merits of it, but I would just say as a sense of propriety, we are holding up our end of what we promised to do, regardless of who signed the document, regardless of what council constituted that decision. But I think there's a bounden duty here to follow what we promised to do, and there are consequences, I think, if we don't.
Yeah, and to tag on to that, the $75 million didn't come out of a future tax. We're not waiting to win the lottery here. We had that money. That money's been allocated properly. $20 million of it was allocated pre-budget. The rest of it's going to come through the budget process. So it's money we have. So that analogy, in my mind, doesn't quite fit. The other thing that's really important to know is that moving forward with this part of the process gets us a permit. We have waited 20 years to get a permit. We've gone through 3 NEPA processes. It has been extraordinarily expensive. To stop now would be a complete waste and a breach, to Mr. Boykin's point. And so what we did was the right thing. It's what many of us up here were elected to do, and I will continue to move that project forward as long as we can. So thank you for your comments.
Well, also, I may also add, Mr. Chairman, that I too was elected to prevent it as well. So we're not going to take one over the other, because just as you have a right to fight for it, I have a right to fight against it, and I'll use every means that I have to kill it, because it's not the right thing to do. It's a waste of tax dollars. Here we are, Charlestonians, paying tax dollars that the state, federal government should be paying. People in Greenville are going to save money because Charlestonians are going to build a road for others. So I'm here to defend those who don't want it. So I have a right to go against it, as you have a right to go for it.
Mr. Darby. Mr. Kaprowski.
This very briefly, no contract in the world is enforceable based on a contingency of winning the lottery or guaranteeing because you're going to win a referendum. No judge, no court, no contract for 75 cents, $75, let alone $75 million is enforceable based on a contingency that may not happen. None of us know whether you're for the referendum or against it. None of us are Nostradamus and know what's going to happen. And in terms of $75 million having that, for most of us, and I'll say this, none of us on this board would gamble $75 or $750 or $75 million of other people's money on a contingency that may not happen. The money doesn't belong to us, it belongs to other people. I don't see how, in good conscience, we can gamble. We had the argument, we lost it, but to gamble $75 million of other people's money that they work hard from, that we take from them, I just found that unconscionable. But that argument has been, we voted on. All of us are elected to represent the people we came from, but I think it's important that people understand that some of us wouldn't gamble $75 million on a contingency. No matter how much you want it to happen, may not happen. None of us can control the outcome of that referendum. I understand it's very much wanted by those who want it, but none of us can force the decision of that. So it still is a gamble of other people's $75 million.
Mr. Boykin?
Very briefly, Mr. Kabrowski, you act like if the money's spent, it's just lost and gone forever. That we got nothing for it, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Every bit of that right-of-way purchased for this project has been deeded over or will be deeded over to the South Carolina Department of Transportation. It will be there for in perpetuity. As to Ms. Honeycutt's point, once the project is shovel-ready and permit is in hand, that permit's good for up to 20 years. It also then makes the project acceptable for more state or federal funding sources. None of that's available right now. So I'd remind you, it's not money thrown out of the car window, never to be seen again. That property isn't going to be any cheaper in the future. So, whether we build it or someone else builds it, it will get built eventually because these people are going to demand it. They're going to be mired in gridlock, and it ain't getting better anytime soon. So everybody talks about how long it's going to take. Well, it'll be forever if we don't start now. Thank you.
Mr. Pryor?
No, Mr. Moody had his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess we'll just see. I'm always amazed, Mr. Kabrowski, at somebody in Mount Pleasant who has Ravenel Bridge that the county pays for, has Highway 17 that was widened as a down payment on 526, has 41 on the board, has Isle of Palms Connector, to sit there and tell people that represent the islands in West Ashley, we don't need this. You got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. So, I guess we'll just see. Mass transit, if it doesn't pass, mass transit goes away. If it doesn't pass, your beloved greenbelts go away, and we'll just see. So I think we move on.
I'd like to add one thing for everybody. As you see in this process, we're reaching out to the other communities and finding out what roads are needed. We did this the last 2 times, and I'm going to ask that we authorize staff to hold 5 public meetings to seek input on projects to be funded through the 3rd Transportation Sales Tax Referendum. Those meetings will be held in various areas of the county so that everybody will be able to attend. You'll have input into these various road projects, and you may bring up a project that needs to be brought. But the most important, the biggest thing that I see as a citizen is that we start planning these projects far out. And we're looking at Glen McConnell Parkway now. This has been planned for a while, and we got gridlock out there now. We got people in traffic. We got people on Maybach Highway in traffic. We got people on Highway 17 and 41, and we got Highway 17 in Maine. And these are projects that we're working on now, and we need to get them built. And anything that slows us down just keeps that further away from being built and costs more money. And the Mark Clark is a great example of that. So anyway, yes, sir.
All I'm going to say is what I continue to say all before. The people who are against it the most are the ones that use it the most. I guarantee you when they leave from here tonight, those that live on Johns Island or those that live in Mount Pleasant will use 526 to get back to and fro. And if you don't believe me, tell them to go down Highway 17 and see how long it takes them to get home. I mean, public safety has always been one of my biggest advocate. I've been an advocate for public safety. I ran on public safety. And you got to look at if there's a natural disaster, if there's a hurricane, people need to be evacuated. Where do they go? This is much bigger than just 526. It's about saving lives. But the city of North Charleston takes on hundreds of thousands of cars every day passing back and forth. People coming from Mount Pleasant, people coming from West Ashley, Johns Island, James Island, going to work and going back home. So it's okay for them to come and destroy our neighborhoods and with all the traffic, but then they don't want to be a part of trying to just fix the problem. I say again, the majority of the folks who are against this use 526 to go back and forth to their commute every day. And if you think I'm joking, put a GPS on the car.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Mr. Darby.
Sometimes I hope common sense will avail. I forget how many billion, I think, but something of that nature. About 8 miles of road. That comes out to about $287 million a mile. I guess my question is, does this council have the clairvoyance to look beyond just the 25 years? Because if we spend all of this money on 526, what happens when that comes to capacity? Then what? Well, we're going to make more dirt to pave more roads? That's the question. It's going to come to capacity one day. And I've been asking this council to look at mass transit in terms of rail. Because to build this as the all comprehensive, and that's all, it's not going to work. Because 25 years later, it's now full to capacity. Then what? Then what? That's the question. So now is the time to bring it a comprehensive terms of 526, rail, light rail, however we want to mention it. But for us to say this is going to resolve it all at $287 million a mile, if that's conservatism, I don't want to be a part of it.
Chairman, can I say one quick thing?
Thank you, Mr. Darby.
Yes, sir.
This,
Any other?
yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, did you need a motion in order to authorize the meetings?
I don't think so.
Okay, I just want to make sure. that-
Mr. Werman had his
Thank you.
hand raised
Oh,
there
Mr.
on the
Werman, I'm
end.
sorry, I did not see you.
Did not want to disregard him.
No, I mean, there apparently is not a need for a motion. There wasn't really anything on the floor. I would commend Councilman Darby for eloquently making a lot of points that I certainly agree with. I guess one thing I would say, to maybe bring it back to, tangible things moving forward, in the immediacy at least, is we are going to have a public process. Now, I don't think on the menu of that public process is going to be taking 526 out of that. I would certainly want that, but that's not where council is right now. However, there are a lot of projects. There are a lot of different modes of transport, for instance, mass transit, that could be funded with the remainder of this. And so people, even those who are very likely to ultimately vote against this referendum and maybe don't think that any combination of this that includes the 526 extension is worth it, I think everyone would agree that we want the best possible version of this to go forward. And if 526 has to be on it, I certainly would rather have a referendum go before the public that includes funding for mass transit, that gives us some way of digging out of the problems that we continually have when we only build roads after too much development. So, maybe there is a way to split the baby. I don't even know if I would want to do that. But I do know that if there's only one option that's going to be presented, and that's how this thing's going to go, I would want to make sure that option is as palatable as possible and then make a decision on how to vote for it later.
Thank you, Mr. Werman. Thank you, Mr. Oziek. I'm sorry, I'm trying to pronounce your name, I'm sorry. Thank you for a very good presentation, and we needed it. Thank you much.
May I make just a general comment that has something to do with this but adjacent?
Okay.
Went back to that last slide. I don't want them to pull it back up. And the process that we're going through now for this particular issue, and we talked and talked and talked about, affordable housing, ways and means, looking at our housing, our future plan, creating concrete tools in order to achieve whatever our goals we hoped would be. And this, the end of that presentation, outlined an entire process from now through handing off the referendum for the ballot. And I would just hope, because again, you know, I only have one more year, but I would just hope that in the future, when it comes to other issues, even if you're in a minority, whatever that means, because I think all of our issues are, you know, similar, and we should really have more agreements than disagreements, but we would be as vigorous as making certain same staff, different departments or whatever, but same capability among staff that could have yielded a similar, very intelligent process that has been outlined here tonight, that I can see from tonight through next year, how this entire thing would go, including all of these meetings that you're saying we don't even have to vote on, but through consensus will happen in all of these various municipalities around our county. I hope that even if it's not an issue that we're excited about, that we would at least permit similar processes equitably to be applied to issues that are for the greater good, especially when it has been decided, even if it was a narrow 5-4 vote by this council. And I just wanted to highlight that, because when these things happen in real time, I'm going to put the flag on the play now, because I only have 12 more months. And so when my voice is gone, it's going to be gone. But I just wanted to say that because this shows me the capability when we're for something. And that's all I would like to say.
Thank you, sir. Consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And thank you, Reverend Middleton, so eloquently stated. But I would like to piggyback on what Mr. Darby said too. If we are going to take this to the people, it needs to be specific, and the word 526 needs to be on the ballot, not a combination of roads and not identifying the roads. 526 needs to be on the ballot. I said it the last time, and I'll say it again. And if the majority of the people approves it, then it's approved for 526. But if it's going to be where it's a cluster of roads that's put in and says, well, it's going to be for roads and identify the project, it doesn't identify the project, I will have a problem with that. So I hope when they do this referendum, whoever does it, Madam Attorney, that the word 526 is on the agenda. And that will separate whether people want it or they don't want it. But if it's just going to be a combination of, we're going to do a combination of roads and doesn't specifically point out 526, I'm not in support of that.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Wiggins?
Real briefly, Mr. Darby, I wanted to make a comparison because you bring up a good point about how much the road costs per mile. And in 2001, the Ravenel Bridge cost $644 million and it's 2.5 miles of constructed road and bridge. In today's dollars, that'd be $1.1 billion to build that bridge. So the cost of 526 is not out of the ordinary. It's just today's cost of building. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Consent agenda. Items 2B, C, and D.
Second.
Move to approve by Mr. Middleton and Mr. Moody. And one of these items, we have a planning commission applicant by Mr. Kabrowski. Is Ms. Cox here? Ms. Cox, would you like to say hello?
I would like to say hello. My name is Susan Cox. Mr. Kabrowski has nominated me for a position on the Planning Commission, and I just wanted to introduce myself and say that I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with folks on the Planning Commission and hopefully to meet all of you folks in the process. I have lived in the county for 9 years. My background professionally was in commercial real estate finance, but now I'm working in residential real estate with Carolina One. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to work with the folks on planning to move the agenda as set forth in the comprehensive plan forward for Charleston County. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Mr. Kabrowski, did your planning person resign or something?
Well, they won election to the town of Bowendorf. And so it was a
Contract, dual office holder, right. Okay, thank you.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to move forward 2B, 2C, and 2D. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Number 3, ARPA initiatives.
3A, B, and C.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Honeycutt, seconded by Mr. Boykin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Have it. Thank you very much. Public hearings, multi-county industrial park amendments.
Okay. Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing before final approval by council of an ordinance to further amend the multi-county part between Charleston County and Colleton County.
We have one person signed up, Mr. Anthony Bryant.
I would take my hat off, but it is cold in here. I'm going to make my public comment on defining areas of the county administrative authority are specifically addressed by the state law and organizational manner by which council business is conducted due to the fact that Joe Dawson, your former county attorney, I received from the clerk of the U.S. Court of Appeals his opinion regarding, my order of opinion regarding O'Connell versus Mason, which expressed that, evil-minded people, can impact public officials, and Graham v. Riddle, which deals with a frivolous criminal in Virginia. So you're on Instagram right now, Facebook, 3,000 sheriff's offices, 17,000 local law enforcement agencies, and a sheriff with 8 people no longer with us. So that's why I want to talk about dissent. So when people dissent on any economic development project, may it be Boeing, may it be Volvo, may it be any major development, we need a law or ordinance to protect said person from retaliation. This project is in Colleton County. They have a clerk with a serious issue right now in terms of an investigation of their court. Okay, so I'm letting you know that this growth we're talking about could be pretty dangerous for people. Okay, so if you open your mouth up and go against 526, there are interest in going concerns around here that's going to make $75 million in soft costs, right? And soft cost money. Construction companies, bankers, hedge funds, who knows? Going to make a bunch of paper. So if you speak against said project, you will be said someplace else. You have some concrete someplace else, like you in Jersey back in the day when they found Hoffa. So we got to really be serious in terms of these major projects and being against them. You poor and they ain't got no power, no money, you be like Fred Hampton.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Number 1B, financial incentives for Palmetto Logistics.
Notice hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold a public hearing regarding an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and between Charleston County and Palmetto Logistics Center, South Carolina.
Mr. Bryant signed up again for that one.
For the record, I served on the BZA for close to 10 years, so I know a whole lot about that. And I don't see anything wrong with the county doing something different in the city of Charleston, who gentrified black folk out the city. And I don't see anything wrong with that, because there ain't no black folk. We got to pay our taxes. We got to protest taxes. We paying all the taxes. So now here we got Boeing, Volvo, whoever this person is, bringing us jobs. We have the State Ports Authority saying, well, we don't pay any taxes to State Ports Authority, but we do directly commit a certain amount of money. How do you measure that? Because that's what she said. When inflation for this area is so high for people, well, we're talking about the individual citizen and he or she's capacity to pay rent. So the issue becomes, if you're paying over 50% on rent, then your billions of dollars, whatever you're talking about for roads and concrete and soft costs and friends, can go to everyday folk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. We have a third public hearing.
Yes, sir. Notice is hereby given that Charleston County Council will hold 2 public hearings. This is the second public hearing regarding a second amendment to the Golden Grove Development Agreement.
Nobody signed up for that one.
Okay. Thank you. Next, we have public comments.
Okay, we do have 8 people signed up for that. Mr. Bryant, and then Susan Kershaw and Anna Hofford.
Mr. Bryant just
Okay,
left.
so Susan
He's-
Kershaw.
He's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I saw him walk out.
I won't be here much, but I won't be here much. I got a mother in my house, almost 80 years old. There's warrants executed by the federal government in our community, 100 warrants throughout the whole state. U.S. Magistrate Chiva Hodges did order an opinion in terms of Graham v. Riddle. And I got Graham v. Riddle on my order. And I got O'Connell v. Mason on my order. So it's a said evil man at my physical address with an 80-year-old. Or someone in your family had a Department of Corrections warrant from way back, or probation way back. We suggest that people get an annual warrant from everybody involved, everybody. Breonna Taylor was taken out because of a no-knock warrant. Now, that's what we face in our community, warrants. 111 warrants for sex offenses, domestic violence, criminal street gangs, right? Where else with repeat offenders? They probably repeat in 3rd and 4th grade at Charleston County School District because their parents got to go work 2 jobs to pay rent. But at the end of the day, that's what you're saying about Anthony G. Brown, Joe Dawson, O'Connell v. Mason? That's serious. That's every public official in the country. All right? I got to deal with that for the rest of my life. I got a badge. It's like a slave around here. Okay, so therefore, you paid him millions of dollars. You took care of him and his family. He broke me, put me out of business. So I hope you're happy about that. I'm going to be just fine. Humiliation leads to motivation. We off the boat, the slave ship, they said you weren't a human being. The 410 years said we was human beings. How that's going to change? What you're talking about, bottom line with these language projects, is basically putting people out their houses. $475 million? You know how much houses you can get for $75 million? We're talking about 526 and people sleeping in their cars? Come on. Is this, you got a conscience? You love Jesus? Find him. You need him.
Susan Kershaw, Anna Hofford, John Zolgar.
Hi, my name is Susan Kershaw. I live at 3605 Berry Hill Road on Johns Island. I encourage the council members who are in favor of the Public Works Amendments, item 1A, to the county zoning rules to share their reasoning more transparently with the public. This is an important issue to many in the county. Currently, your thinking has not been very clear. Councilmember Boykin, you said that you want Public Works to have the same authority as SCDOT, and you want to align our county Public Works authority with that of our surrounding municipalities. Why? I'd like to know why. I understand the current process is not working as you would like. However, your suggestion is an extreme measure. Why not work with the zoning regs to make changes that allow Public Works a different process, but doesn't take away the BZA oversight? Please find an opportunity, all of you who support this change, to share why this is your preferred way to solve this problem. Councilmember Honeycutt, you say that the community will have a say in the decision of whether to take down trees, that there is a process in place for this. And earlier this evening, in committee, you referred to changes sent back to planning that will give people more input. I thank you for that. I need to look at those. I'm not sure if they're going to address our concerns. However, can you and others who support these changes share how County Council will keep our voice heard? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kershaw.
Anna Hoffer, John Zolgar, Rich Thomas.
Building on that, first thing I want to know is what is the reason for the proposed amendments regarding the exemptions for public works? As written, as presented, it is said as requested by Public Works. That's not a reason. We really need to understand what the reasons are in order to understand what the solutions should be. To date, I've not heard a clear reason with respect to, potential conflict with state statutes. That's a hypothetical. I've not ever seen a project turned down because it allegedly conflicts. B, if it's stopping projects because of denials, where are the denials? As the record shows, there haven't been public works projects denied, variance requests denied, in the last decade at least. So what is the real problem? That's where we need to start with the real solution. And a lot to say, but obviously I don't have time. I will say that I appreciate the contracts discussion tonight. That was my favorite class in law school. And I want to remind you all that we have a contract. And I hope that you all don't breach your duties. Because if you do, default's not going to be fun. I guess lastly, with respect to the comparison to municipalities, a town or a city, by definition, is an urban area. Counties encompass rural areas. That's why there are exemptions within urban areas, within a town or a city for some of these things, not on the county as a whole. And while Dorchester and Berkeley may have them, Beaufort doesn't, for example, and they're a lot more like Charleston County. So again, I just think some more thoughts needed. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Hofford.
John Zolgar, Rich Thomas, Linda Blanchard.
Good evening. John Zolgar, 5528 Frisco Lane. I just want to thank you for listening to the public and being open to modifications to the Public Works requested changes to the ZLDR. The system works. Thank you for sending these items back to the Planning Commission for additional public input. I just hope you continue, as we go through this process, I encourage you to continue to look at what the public is saying and be open to additional modifications. Finally, I just want to talk about what adjacent counties are doing. And as it was mentioned, Beaufort County zoning ordinance, section 1320, so if you want to look it up, states, the provisions of the development code shall apply to developments by the county or its agencies and departments. Shall apply. As it was just mentioned, Beaufort County, unincorporated jurisdictions, are much more like Charleston County than the cities are. The Beaufort County does not have one set of codes for the public and one set of codes for themselves. We should consider the same. In Dorchester County, zoning ordinance section 1242C, you can look it up, states a grand tree is a tree of special value, which due to its age and stature is deemed of irreplaceable value to Dorchester County. Irreplaceable value. Some people say, perhaps some even on this council, that what's the issue? Trees can be replaced. They will grow back. The answer is that due to their age and stature, they are of irreplaceable value. Again, thanks for listening to the public, and I encourage you to continue to listen to them as we go through this process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Rich Thomas, Linda Blanchard, Marion Brailsford.
I'm Rich Thomas, 4360 Betsy Carrison Speedway on Johns Island. I heard a lot of negatives about road projects and possibly being impeded by the process that's in place now, but I wanted to bring up one proposed project that was actually enhanced by the process that's in place. Back a few months ago, we learned from a BZA packet that there were, I think, 28, 29 grand trees that were scheduled to be taken down on River Road at Cane Slash. It wasn't a very good plan. Once residents, citizens found out about that, we brushed off some of the dust from plans that were presented 15, 20 years ago. to build South Pitchfork and align that with Cane Slash, maybe put in a roundabout. And that's actually a much better solution. And we would not have known about this project had we not seen that in the BZA. So I just wanted to bring that up as an example of where the process actually works in everybody's favor. Another point, since Mr. Darby brought up the 526 business, I remember sitting here in this room in 2012, and we had about 250 or 300 people in the room at that time. And there was a vote on 526. And at that time, the admitted criminal Bobby Harrell and some of his minions were threatening to sue the county over $11.5 million that had been spent. And to Mr. Boykin's point, about half of that was in right-of-way that had been purchased for the 526 project. So really, the county's exposure there was maybe $5 million, $5 or $6 million. And if we'd have gotten out of that back 11 years ago, we wouldn't be in this situation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Blanchard, Marion Brailsford, Diamond Curry.
I'm Marion Brailsford, 45 Coburg Road, Charleston. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the community of Edisto Island as a board member of the Edisto Island Preservation Alliance. Our Preservation Alliance stewards the Edisto Island National Scenic Byway, and it's one of 2 nationally accredited scenic byways in Charleston County. And that's pretty phenomenal. 1 county with 2 nationally recognized scenic byways, both lined with tree canopies that draw tourists to Charleston County. And in addition, there are many more roads in Charleston County lined with beautiful grand oaks and canopies. Not only do these trees enhance the quality of life for Charleston County citizens, but directly impact tourism that boosts local economies. Nevertheless, our tree canopies, it seems, are constantly threatened by severe pruning or tree removal of grand trees or scenic trees. And it seems it's mostly for convenience sake or for the almighty dollar's sake. And this removal done without Board of Zoning appeals to hear from the citizens of Charleston County is really a sad story. Our tree-lined roads are important to the citizens of Charleston County, and the citizens of Charleston deserve the right to voice their opposition to the removal of specific important trees. Please do not approve the proposed waiver, or at least be open for modifications to the ordinance. And please continue to allow input on tree removal. Thank you.
And the last
Thank you, Ms.
person,
Brailsford.
Diamond Curry.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of council. I'm here on behalf of the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce, and I wanted to continue expressing the Chamber's support for Charleston County as they work on their comprehensive plan as well as their ZLDR amendments. Anything that's going to streamline processes and get things done is a huge benefit to citizens and businesses, so thank you for continuing to work on this, to continue evaluating all of your amendments. I'm not going to beat a dead horse on 526 because I'm sure you all know that the Chamber supports it, but Mr. Darby was right. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. No one can predict the future, but we owe it to ourselves, to our children, and to our grandchildren to at least try. And we believe that working on getting that project funded is trying, and it's one of the best efforts we have. So thank you.
Thank you. Is that the last one? Okay, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. And please state your name and your address.
Yes, my name is Jametta Hamilton, and I live on James Island. I am the mother of two of the young men that was in the car accident on Riverland Drive. We're not asking, but we are asking for the tree to be cut down. I know that it's a tree that's a monument, pretty much, the oak. So if we cannot cut the tree down, I am asking and I am pleading for some lights, some signals, some reflections, something to warn passengers or drivers to know that something is ahead of them. We have visitors on James Island who doesn't know that back road. And when they go through, they don't know what's going on. And we've heard of this road have killed, this tree, I should say, has killed so many people. When I was a little child, my parents always told us about this tree. We know how important trees are for the environment, but this particular tree has been tragic, not only to my family, but to the entire family of James Island. So we are coming to you and asking you to, I know it's a state location, to get in contact with them. Tell them that we need help. We know that the tree cannot come down, but it has to be a little bit more obvious. And I want to say thank you for allowing me to speak, to express my grieving and my mourning experience right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. We're very sorry for your loss. We're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back. We'll start up at 6:40. Thank you. It's 6:35 now. We'll start back at 6:40. Carter.
Oh, you're a man. Oh, man. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our county council meeting. First order of business, Mr. Middleton, would you give us our prayer?
Let us pray. Eternal God, we bless you, we thank you, we praise your name, and we come asking that you encompass this place where we find ourselves today in these county council chambers. We ask, God, your blessing upon our chairman and our county administrator, all of these council members, this entire county staff. We ask, God, that you continue to bless those who are in the lines of fire, the front lines, those who are serving our county and our country and our state, those who continue to put themselves before, put others before they place themselves, those who are service workers. And we ask, God, that you continue to bless them and their families. We say a special prayer tonight for those who were tragically killed in the car accident in James Island, and we ask a special blessing upon the Hamilton, the Cromwell families, Watkins families. We ask now that you continue to heal them as they mourn in their loss. And then, God, we just continue to ask that we lift up the public good of Charleston County so that we might be able to advance our cause. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Moody, would you lead us in
I
the
pledge
pledge?
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Freedom of Information Act.
In compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meetings and agendas were posted and distributed to news media and those requesting notification.
Thank you. Third reading ordinances, financial incentives for Palmetto Logistics Center property owner LP.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and between Palmetto Logistics Center, South Carolina property owner LP, including any related or affiliated entities and any sponsor affiliates, whereby Charleston County will enter into a fee in lieu of taxes arrangement with the company, providing for payment by the company of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes, providing for the allocation of fee in lieu of taxes paid by the company under the agreement for the establishment of multi-county industrial business park and other matters relating thereto, with the right to amend up to third reading. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Kabrowski?
No.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 8 ayes and 1 nay.
Thank you, ma'am. Amendments to Multi-County Industrial Park Ordinance, third reading.
An ordinance to further amend the agreement for development of a joint county industrial park by and between Charleston County, South Carolina, and Colleton County, South Carolina, providing for the development of a jointly owned and operated industrial business park so as to include additional property in Charleston County as part of the joint county industrial park, and to update the status of certain property in Charleston County with respect to the joint county industrial park. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Kabrowski? Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Ordinance passes third reading with 9 ayes.
Thank you. Second reading ordinances, financial incentives for Project Modern.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and between Charleston County and an entity currently known to the county as Project Modern, including any related or affiliated entities and sponsor affiliates, whereby Charleston County will enter into a fee in lieu of taxes arrangement with Project Modern, providing for payment by Project Modern of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes, providing for certain special source revenue or infrastructure credits, providing for the allocation of fees in lieu of taxes paid by Project Modern under the agreement for establishment of multi-county industrial business park and other matters relating thereto, with the right to amend up to third reading. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby? Mrs. Honeycutt? Aye. Mr. Kabrowski?
Nay.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
Ordinance passes second reading with 8 ayes and 1 nay.
Number 3B, Golden Grove Development Agreement, Second Amendment.
An ordinance approving the Second Amendment to the Golden Grove Development Agreement. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt? Mr. Kabrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
The ordinance passes second reading with 9 ayes.
Thank you. Human Resources Committee.
Chairman, I move for committee recommendation.
Second.
Human Resources Committee, moved by Ms. Honeycutt, seconded by Mr. Boykin. Mr. Moody.
What is that recommendation?
Do we have a description of it?
Yes, I would like to know.
Yes, sir. It's,
We had it. It was in our last meeting.
do you want me to read it?
Please. Please,
The
Madam
committee
Clerk.
recommended that council increase the annual leave accrual rate for full-time county employees working an 80-hour pay period to a total of 120 hours per year from the start of employment until through their 9th year. The annual leave accrual rates for employees working other schedules will be proportionately increased, and increase the sick leave accrual rate for full-time county employees working an 80-hour pay period to a total of 160 hours per year. The sick leave accrual rates for employees working other schedules will be proportionally increased, with the understanding that these actions will be effective for the pay period starting January 12th, 2024.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams, I'll wait till after you. Go ahead.
I mean, so we originally, I think, deferred this. I was going to speak with staff and was able to do so, looking into a more broad-based sort of paid FMLA leave policy. Was able to look at that. Frankly, there's just not a lot of information available, but staff was very good about getting me what we do have. I just don't know that we're able to move forward with that. However, I would reiterate, and I did actually learn that you can do that, by the way, so it might be something to explore in the future. However, I would reiterate that I just cannot support these two options exclusively. Would be happy to support, and if this fails, would plan to make a motion to add to this. What were originally items sort of 1 and 2, which was in addition to the sick leave and in addition to the annual leave boosts, that we would also create a parental leave policy of basically up to 6 weeks for mothers and 2 weeks for the fathers. So, again, that's where I'm at, but certainly understand the concerns motivating the additions to sick leave. My understanding is annual leave just sort of needs to happen generally, unconnected to any sort of, parental or sick leave type issue. So I sort of view that generally or separately, but would certainly support that in conjunction with the type of 6-week and 2-week parental leave policies that have been adopted by the state and the city and many other public entities, not to mention private entities across our community.
Any further discussion, Mr. Pryor?
Yes, sir. I agree with Mr. Werman. When we first started this, it started out with 6 weeks for and 2 weeks. And we took it and we made it 120 hours and 160 hours weekly. Well, 120 hours is only 3 weeks and 160 is only 4 weeks. And what I see here is while we try to satisfy all the rest of the employees, I understand that, and that should be a goal we look at, but it should be separately from what we actually asked for parental leave. And if this council feels that they want to do the 120 and the 160, I would ask that they incorporate the 6 weeks and the 2 weeks for parental leave as well. But just to vote for this without giving them the maternity leave, I can't support it in this present faction. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Kombrowski?
I have a middle ground on this. I think it's the proper thing to do with the finances of the county, and I believe it's a conservative thing to do to conserve families, and I'd be honored to support something that would give mothers and fathers parental leave. But I think, as I always say, that when we look at county salaries, the benefits are 42% in addition to what the salary. I cannot support the motion as it is, but I would support giving mothers and fathers the parental leave. I think that fosters families, and I'd be honored to support that. I've seen how it has helped my daughters and my own and my son-in-laws and where they work, and I think I'd be proud to support something that gives mothers and fathers that time to bond with their new children. But I couldn't support financially the overall with the sick leave and the annual leave proposals.
I think if we were to support something more than what's been recommended, it would be a pretty expensive proposition.
Well, I was saying, as opposed to let me make it clear, I would support the parental leave, but I could not support the current proposal. Sorry if I didn't make it clear. It wouldn't be in addition, it would be instead, if that was my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Moody, anybody else? Okay.
I'll mention something. Yes, I think this is a good compromise that staff has brought forward. It treats 2,700 employees all fairly. Mr. Werman, I'm not opposed to looking at something down the line. I don't think I can't imagine what the costs are to that sort of benefit, but that would be a problem to me. And I think this proposal also requires a little. I mean, we still have the issue where employees can buy short-term disability to cover these things. It would also require a little personal planning. And I think this treats all 2,700 employees fairly, and that's what I'm here to do, is look out for everybody, not just a few. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
The roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote, please.
Thank you.
So this is for the committee recommendation. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Nay.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Kabrowski?
Nay.
Mr. Middleton?
Nay.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor?
Nay.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Sass?
Aye.
The motion fails with 5
Chairman?
nays and 4 ayes.
I would make the motion I just stated to, or referred to, that, we would add to this, the 6 and 2 weeks, and, if I can get a second on that, I'd,
I'll second it
want
for
to make
discussion
that, but
purposes.
if not, then
You say add to this, or are you just making a simple motion about the 6 weeks and 4 weeks? Are you 6 weeks and 2 weeks, excuse me, or are you combining the previous motion with the annual leave, sick leave, and the parental leave?
my preference would be to combine it. I think we have, apparently, folks who would support the parental leave. If we can get folks to do all of this, I think that, addresses some of the concerns that other folks had. But, if that doesn't pass, then I'd certainly support just doing the 6 and 2, which was originally what I was sort of pursuing when we initially tried to do this. Obviously, I don't speak for all of council, but that was certainly where I was going with it and where I think a lot of folks were sort of contemplating initially.
Thank you. Mr. Boykin?
I would just say that I think for me it has to be an either-or proposition. Either you do the 6 and 2 or you do the staff recommendation. I don't think combining them makes any sense.
I would not support combining them, but in terms of respectfully, I think there is something sacred and different when you have a child, and that time is irreplaceable. I think that is unique to put the county resources to give time to mothers and fathers when they have a baby. I think that is special and sacred, and I would support that.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, if I would like to get something done tonight, I can withdraw it if there's a motion for the 6 and 2, and we can maybe recirculate that.
You withdraw your motion?
I withdraw it.
I withdraw the second, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to go with the 6 and the 2.
And
For parents.
Instead of the committee recommendation?
The recommendation, I'd like to go with 6 weeks and 2 weeks for the father and the mother parents.
So you'd be leaving the current status the way it is, the number of hours, not increasing the hours?
Well, I would go for all of it, but there's not enough support for it. If you would vote along with me and you wanted to go in, I'd add it into it. If you'd be a yes vote for the current hours and this, I'd say, yeah, let's do it. But apparently there's not enough support, and so I want to get this passed for the parental leave, and then we can come back and then debate the 120 hours and the 160 hours in the beginning of the year.
I'll second your motion, Mr.
Thank you.
I am concerned about the cost of this and how much it's going to cost us.
It's going to cost us, Mr. Sass, it's, we fund what we want to fund. If we want to fund both, we'll find a way to fund it. Okay, we just, we're talking about $75 million a few minutes ago, and we found a way to fund $75 million. And so if we really care about the people, this is important. And so I'm going to make this motion and hope it passes tonight. And in January, I'm going to come back and ask for the 120 and the 160. So my motion is on the floor with a second, and I hope for a roll call vote.
Any further discussion?
Not a discussion, but I want to make sure what we're voting on. This motion is to combine.
It's the 6 and the 2 parental leave. For the
All right,
mother
thank
and
you.
the- That's it.
Just so I understand it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I recall we discussed this, and I want to make sure it's the same. There was discussion about how long you had to be employed or vesting. What was that?
I don't know that if I could be recognized, Mr. Chairman, I don't know that, we came down to it. I think I may have publicly said it. If not, then I'll publicly say now, I've looked at some of these policies. A year vesting is not uncommon.
Mr. Pryor, would you allow me to amend and add the 1-year vesting so that we?
What do we normally ask for people when they come? 6 months and they invest it, and 6 months?
We don't have this now,
so we don't have it.
we're adopting
All right,
this.
I'll accept the 1 year.
Thank you.
I'll accept the 1 year. All right. No problem. I'll accept the 1 year.
Any further discussion? Mr. Moody?
as far as cost, I mean, I guess we don't, this is new to us. Do we know how to project what this would cost?
We really don't have an idea of what this would cost. We don't have a sense of how many people will actually use the parental leave part of it, because you're talking about spouses that could take time off, and I don't have a clue what that's going to be.
Mr. Chair?
Hold on. Does this include employees need to take leave to care for sick parents or anything like that?
No, sir, just for maternity leave right now. The 120 and 160 which y'all didn't want to vote for, that was included for that. So like I said, I just want to get these for these maternity leave. And if y'all willing to come back and roll up the sleeves and do the 120 and the 160 at the beginning of the year, if the good Lord delay is coming, I'll be right there fighting for the employees. And one more question before I give up the floor. How much was it going to cost for the 120 and the 160? I was just about to ask that. Yeah, so I know we got those information because the price was given before, but I just want to make sure, what was the price on that?
Actually, I don't have an estimate on that. It provides for additional hours for employees, but I don't know what hours employees are going to use.
But why would we bring something without the price? I thought we had that price before. I mean, that should be easy to figure 120 and 160, just an estimate. I don't think nobody's asking for a guarantee, but why would we bring something to this body without a price? And then we say, well, we don't know what it's going to cost for the maternity leave. I don't understand that. So when can you have us a price on this?
Mr. Chairman, I do recall this discussion. I don't think it actually costs the county anything. Mr. Werman may be able to.
I think you, Councilman Honeycutt, I think that was the point that I was going to make. It's difficult to predict because there are always going to be indirect costs.
But it's the same thing. I can argue with maternity leave. If they take off the 6 weeks of maternity leave, it's not going to cost the county anything because somebody's still going to be doing the work.
No, I think that would apply to all types of leave, basically.
No, but I'm just saying with maternity.
It's additional paid leave.
Yes.
They don't have now.
They don't have now. You know, but I was worried about the maternity leave. If you got 6 women working in the office or 6 people working and one leaves for 6 weeks, the work still gets going, you would have to pay that employee anyway.
Mr. Werman?
I think I recall this discussion that really for any type of this, the way this shows up in our budget is that we've budgeted for folks' salaries. So, you know, the more time you're going to say you can take time off, whether it's categorized under any of these buckets, the more time you say you can take time off and still maintain pay, that doesn't increase the budget in any way, shape, or form. There are, you know, obviously costs and benefits associated with it. I would note that, you know, retaining employees is a benefit that probably counterbalances some of the costs. But the costs, I think, are generally going to be overtime is probably the cash cost that you're going to see to the extent that, and you just can't predict it. And I think we've tried many times. I mean, there have been multiple times this has come up, and we have talked about, let's get some costs, and I just think this is as clear as it's ever going to be, no matter which course one were to take.
An analysis of employees who have taken time over a period of time, could be 2022, could be 2023, up through, you know, a certain quarter. I mean, you could not predict, but you can see based on what has been used and estimate if somebody wanted to do that. I mean, people have taken off already.
I would certainly like to move forward with the policy now. We've talked about it many times. Yes, I would like to get, if there are ways to do deeper cost studies, I think I mentioned that a paid FMLA leave, which is, you know, basically just tracking FMLA categories, maybe that was something we could apply to that, and that would, you know, address some of these other concerns. But, I mean, I think we do have plenty of indicia that this is feasible and viable given how many other entities do it. And, again, I just think that there's never going to be a hard number because it's just not budgeted that way.
I mean, there could be costs to hire temporary people, and you could have certain departments that might not have enough people to run, you know, depending on what they're doing. So it could be reason that we'd have to hire temps or to find somebody else to do the work while they're gone. Mr. Boykin?
May I call for the question, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I was just fixing to say anything.
Yes, sir. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Mrs. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Kabrowski?
Nay.
Wait.
Wait, let me understand that.
This is the 6 and 2,
Okay, I
man.
thought that the last one was the combined one.
No,
I'm
sir.
sorry.
No, sir, 6 weeks for mothers.
If this is the
2 weeks.
mothers only, yes,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Middleton?
I'm sorry. I was almost confused myself because this was the moral one that
Right.
you wanted to stand on. Okay, yes,
I
okay.
thought it was the combined one. I
No,
apologize.
I just wanted to be sure
Thank
because
you.
we wanted to be on the same
No, we
team
are.
on
Thank
this.
you.
Okay.
Mr. Moody?
I mean that.
Aye.
It's aye for me, yes.
Aye.
Mr. Werman?
Aye.
Mr. Sass?
Aye.
The motion passes with 9 ayes.
All right. Next item, committee
Mr. Chairman, I would
recommendations.
move for committee recommendation 5A through 5G, and we need a reading on B through F.
I would ask that it be separated, please.
Be separated.
Please.
Oh.
At least 5A.
We are going to read each one. We have to read each one.
You'll vote each time.
We'll vote each time.
Okay.
So we need to vote to move it so we can have the vote, correct?
Yes.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Just to
Hold on.
protect the record, you don't vote every time on a first reading. You're just voting one time for A through G.
So Darby wants to
A
go
and G are
separate.
going
Okay, then
back to
let's-
Planning Commission.
Decide.
Okay.
Get the first reading until the next meeting.
G or not.
Okay, well, let's do each one of them individually. No,
Second meeting. But Kristen,
5A.
Ms. Salisbury just said that A and G are out anyway.
Right, A and
Going to
G, the
Planning
motion
Commission.
is to, I mean, the recommendation is to
Right.
send those back to Planning Commission.
right,
A and G.
So there's no need to
But that was
separate.
committee recommendation.
Right.
right.
got to vote the
But you still do have to vote.
So let's vote for 5A and 5G. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Would you show of hands for nays?
3.
3, okay. Now, 5B, C, D, E, and F.
Aye.
Aye.
Can we separate those? B, C?
Did we need to separate that?
Just C for me.
Okay, 5B, 5B, 5D, 5E, and 5F.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
What is small-scale mining? I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
That was the Planning Commission recommendation to amend the mining operation limits.
In the rural portions of the county.
Non-commercial ag.
Right.
Somebody explain that again then?
Evans?
Sand and all that sort of stuff, like in Orndorff and places like that?
So what this amendment was, out of Planning Commission originally, was to allow small-scale mining operations to occur if they met certain criteria of certain sizes and without having to go through the resource extraction process of going to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So it would open it up to allow smaller resource extraction operations to occur on agricultural properties. We found in the previous iteration of the mining ordinance, there's a 2.5-mile radius that you cannot be close to the next one any closer than 2.5 miles because of the issues that occurs in some of the neighborhoods. So, but what it was doing, it was precluding those that were trying to do small irrigation ponds like farmers, and also for residents that were doing aesthetic ponds for their own personal use. So this opens it a little bit to allow those smaller ponds to occur without being, without having to meet that 2.5-mile radius. And going to the Board of Zoning Appeals, yes.
To call mining operations then as opposed to agricultural ponds?
Well, mining, that's just the title. It's a resource extraction. If you're not taking the earth off your property, then none of this applies. But when you take the earth off your property, that is in the eyes of the state, that's a mining operation. That's a resource extraction.
Have they considered the noise in the trucks that will go through? I mean, I represent the largest
Yes.
geographic area, the most rural area I'm very concerned about the truck traffic and after the nightmare of what happened in Allendale.
Right. Yes.
I'm very nervous about anything that would allow for more mining operations.
Yeah. So the 2.5-mile radius that was adopted earlier by council, that is not what this talks about. That 2.5-mile radius is still there. This just allows that smaller operations for farmers that we have experienced since council has adopted the 2.5-mile radius ordinance.
Person, people coming to us tonight for this, I haven't.
No, it's just things that we've experienced at staff level. We have had a couple of people that have contacted us directly, but it's something we've experienced at staff level when it comes to the permitting of it and telling them no. And yeah.
I thank you very much for the hard work and time that you obviously put into it, but representing an area this would probably have the most impact, I would respectfully decline this tonight too, unless I heard directly from the people that live in my area and rural areas who would want this. I don't feel I'm prepared to vote for it unless I was assured that they would want this. And I know there's a strong opposition to mining operation. I know there was one there, St. James Elementary School in McClellanville, that people were very concerned about. I know about what happened in Allendale. I don't feel I'm comfortable at this point to pass something like this unless I talk to the people that live there, the mayors of McClellanville and Allendale, especially to get feedback. I don't think we've heard enough from the people affected to vote for this, and I would urge us to refrain until we have a better hear from the people affected most.
That's fine.
Because it could have dire consequences in terms of quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pryor?
So, Joe, let me ask you this question. So you say irrigation ponds and fishing ponds and all that, but let's say, for instance, one of these farmers decided, I want to sell the dirt to somebody for mining purposes. Would this allow them to do that?
If they met the criteria of no larger than 2 acres, it would allow them to do that.
Oh, okay, well, I want to change my vote to no on C because I'm with Larry. I don't want these trucks running in and out of these people. It might be for good intentions.
Yes.
But when it's for good intentions, sometimes bad things happen.
Yeah.
And you open the door. If we could say this would be just for irrigation and pool purposes, fishing ponds only, I can support something like this. But to leave it wide open and broad, I would have to be a no on that on 5C because I don't want to open up the floodgates and these folks, don't have no way to stop this thing.
And understand, this is just something that we've heard on staff side. The 2.5-mile radius in staff's mind, helps control it a lot. It does. But we're getting, at the permitting stage, we're getting a lot of kickback back from folks, but understand.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boykin?
Mr. Evans, real quick. I mean, and I guess the question here is scope. It's hard to consider a 2-acre pond commercial, fair to say. I mean, you're not getting that much material out of 2 acres.
From my understanding of it, from being around it, to mobilize the sizable companies that do this, to mobilize their equipment to go to a site to dig, they're not going to be inclined to do that. And that's the purpose, one of the purposes of having the size limitation, knowing that the larger scale resource extraction operations would not be interested in this type of thing.
But to follow up on this, if there's an existing commercial mining operation, everybody that's within 2.5 miles of that operation, no fault of their own.
Yes.
And that commercial operation may be huge. We've got one on Johns Island that's massive.
Yes.
And it may take a decade to dig it out.
No, that means anyone within 2.5-mile radius of that could not dig a 1 acre or 2 acre pond and haul the dirt off.
Correct.
And that's what the flack that we're getting.
So
back.
all those folks are held in abeyance.
Yes.
Cannot move and dig a fish pond or farm for their horses or livestock or anything else, or to pump water out of.
Unless they keep the dirt on their property.
Right.
If they haul it off, and we can't control who they sell it to. I mean, that's their business.
And many times they're selling that little bit of dirt to cover the cost of the construction of the pond they wanted in the first place. But I'm getting the point, they're stuck essentially until that large operation has run its course, which could be a long time.
And that's the complaint that we've been
Thank you.
getting since the
Mr. Warman,
2.5 mile radius.
did you have your hand up earlier?
I actually have something I want to address after we finish this item. I'm following the discussion now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Honeycutt?
Mr. Evans, one more time. This passed Planning Commission, correct?
It did.
All right. And so there was a whole public process there where they got to hear from people that were put on notice of this, correct?
Yes,
All right.
all of our parties of interest and
Yes. In our Planning Commission, did we receive a bunch of opposition or any opposition to these proposed changes?
No, we
No
didn't.
opposition?
No.
So this went through the public process, the public was heard, our Planning Commission is saying, we think this is a good idea, now it's just our time to make it.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
One simple comment. They asked everybody that's going to vote to visualize 2 acres of dirt coming from your neighbor's lot. 2 acres is a big area in my mind. Thank you.
I just would like to note that I took a helicopter ride specifically over Allendale and looking at some of the larger extractions. I don't know if you've ever seen a hole in the earth, but it is certainly concerning. And not to say I'm just saying that just based on concerns, and I'm going to support this, but I'm saying that based on concerns collaterally, especially when individuals who go in under what seem to be a good intention, and then they just run amok and create a big problem. But certainly over time, these little holes become massive, massive, massive problems.
All right. Can we have a roll call vote?
What are we voting on? Which items?
Yeah, we still haven't voted on
Item
D,
C.
D, E, F.
Well, I thought we were voting.
This is item
One
C.
more question, Mr. Sass. Mr. Evans, and I'm sorry to I think this is a point that maybe allay Mr. Kabrowski's concerns. It is mining if you remove the material from the property, no matter how much you remove, correct?
That's correct.
And they would still have to get a permit from DHEC and be under DHEC monitoring, even if it's a 2-acre pond?
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. That one was number C.
You wanted a roll call vote?
Well, they wanted to vote on that one separately, so let's vote on that one separately.
Okay. Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Darby? Mrs. Honeycutt? Aye. Mr. Kabrowski?
Nay.
Mr. Middleton?
Aye.
Mr. Moody?
Aye.
Mr. Pryor? No. Mr. Werman? Mr. Sass?
Aye.
The motion passes with 6 ayes and 3 nays.
Thank you. Which ones do we have?
We still have D, E, and
E,
F.
F.
We've
B.
done everything except D, E, and F.
D, E, and F.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Mr. Sass, who made the motion, because you might want to have to amend up to third readings? Did you amend that, would you include that?
I don't mind having that part of the
Amend
motion.
up to third reading,
Put E back.
gives you flexibility.
On the one we just did?
All of them.
Okay, sure.
We didn't send E back.
Okay. So we need to vote on D, E, and F?
Yes, sir.
Can you have a further explanation publicly so people know we're voting on for E?
We already did that in finance, Mr. Kabrowski. We did that in finance.
I think we did. I think we
Yes,
did.
that was done in finance.
Did that. So y'all want to vote on these all together or separately?
All together.
All together, okay. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. I think that was,
D, E,
so
F. Yes, sir. So
So-
I think we've covered everything now.
we're finished with 5.
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
just need to read these ordinances. Okay. An ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance Number 1202 as amended to create the boarding stable use to be allowed with conditions in the rural area and to clarify the definitions for different classifications of stables at the following document locations: Chapter 6, Use Regulations, and Chapter 12, Definitions, with the right to amend up to third reading. An ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance Number 1202 as amended to exempt small-scale excavation, and grading activities for residential and agricultural uses from the conditions for large-scale commercial resource extraction at the following document locations, Chapter 6 Use Regulations, with the right to amend up to third reading. An ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance Number 1202 as amended to require bicycle parking for certain developments at the following document locations, Chapter 9 Development Standards, with the right to amend up to third reading. An ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance Number 1202 as amended to clarify tree protection requirements within designated scenic rights-of-way at the following document locations, Chapter 8 Subdivision Regulations, Chapter 9 Development Requirements, and Chapter 12 Definitions, with the right to amend up to third reading. And an ordinance amending the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance Number 1202 as amended to remove redundant language to clarify parking requirements at the following document location, Chapter 9 Development Standards, with the right to amend up to third reading. That's
Thank you,
everything.
ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Werman?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been made aware that we probably need to add some clarity to the parental leave item since it was shifted away from the committee recommendation to make clear when the beginning effective date would be. The beginning effective date that was previously passed out of committee would have been basically the pay period beginning January 12th, 2024. I would just ask that we add that if we can get consent on that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right,
Chair,
consent.
move to approve 6A, B, C, D.
Thank you.
Second. Taken off. B, C, and D, I'm sorry.
Moved by Mr. Middleton, 6B, 6C, and 6D, and seconded by Mr. Pryor. Mr. Boykin, sorry. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, move to approve 7A, B, C.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Middleton, seconded by Ms. Honeycutt. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Approve A through C. 8A through C. I'm sorry.
Moved by Mr. Middleton, seconded by Ms. Honeycutt, 8A, 8B, and 8C. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very, very much. Public comment, Mr. Middleton?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to members of council. I pray that all of you had a very happy Thanksgiving, and certainly it's good to see all of you in this season of Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, and as we approach the new year. It's good to be back, and it's great to see all of you. Thank you.
Glad you're back. Mr. Moody?
I was going to, thank you, Mr. Middleton. I was going to say I have a very large Jewish contingent in my district. Wanted to wish them a very happy Hanukkah that starts tomorrow evening, and also second Mr. Middleton's comment about great, wonderful holiday season. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Darby?
Two things, ditto, and then I just wish I was as handsome as Mr. Thigpen. I'd be in Hollywood making movies.
Oh, boy. All right. Mr. Kabrowski?
Just wanted to say that marked the passing of Henry Kissinger, who was 100 years old. And when commemorating, I heard something that spoke to me. He said that nowhere else than in America where somebody else who was born in Germany, the Orthodox Jewish parents, and came here as a penniless refugee, could have been a Secretary of State and an important person like he was in our nation's history. And I say that because I live in America where I've seen, as in recent times, mobs at universities and in our streets, honoring and supporting those who behead Jewish babies, rape Jewish women, and kill Jewish children in front of their parents. I never thought that I live in America where that was possible. Over time, I've seen it in France, where from relatives that you cannot go outside and be Jewish and recognized as such, and many of the same people have brought their hatred here. And I support the stand with Israel. When October 7th happened, I said from right here that over time, when as Israel, as any country would do to ensure their safety, would try to eliminate those who would behead them, murder their children, rape their women, kill their children in front of their parents' eyes, that the inevitable would happen from the usual suspects. And just like I said, that's happened. And again, I want to express my gratitude to America for what it did for my family, taking us in. And I hope America can remain a place of refuge for everybody. And that this is very alarming to see what's happened in our universities and in our streets. And I hope and pray that that doesn't represent a change in who we are. I thank everybody here again for the resolution that we passed, and for those who, and many of us stood together in the city of Charleston when they had that. And I want to especially thank Reverend Middleton, who gave a very powerful and heartfelt prayer there. So thank you. And for all of us, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Werman?
Nothing from me tonight, Mr. Chairman. I'm grateful for a lot of the work we've been able to do today, but and the spirited discussion on a number of issues, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Mr. Pryor?
Yes, sir. A couple of things. I'm thankful for this council for moving forward with the parental leave policy. I think a lot of our employees will sleep better on tonight and be a whole lot happier. And I don't think it can come at a better time. Secondly, Ms. Salisbury, I'd like to add to the Rules and Policy Committee at our next meeting. I would like to look at our community investment program language. I'd like to have some language looked at, because apparently it's not benefiting the folks who it was intended to. That's the smaller folks in the community. And when, these folks can't get $10,000 and they're doing a whole lot of the work in the community, I mean, it bothers me. It was a purpose and a reason why we scaled it down, then took $300,000 and set it aside. When you look at some of these big companies like, the Food Bank, Ronald McDonald, and, all these other groups, those folks are getting big funding. And, for them to come in and squeeze the other smaller one out because of technicalities, I'd like to discuss that. And secondly, Mr. Sass, I had asked for this to be put on the agenda with item, and I was told that you took it off, and I didn't know anything about it. We spoke earlier today. I wish you had said something, but I would ask when a council member puts something on the agenda, if you're going to ask that to be removed, courtesy should reference a phone call. But I think we should hear it and let the council decide, not the chairman decide.
Yes, sir. Mr. Boykin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to follow your comments, extending my condolences and prayers to the Hamilton family. I happened to have been on James Island camping at the county park the night that tragedy happened. And I additionally want to recognize Mr. Brooks McGugan, one of our St. John's Fire Commissioners, and give him my prayers and condolences for the loss of his son, Bruce McGugan, over on Johns Island, also in a tragic motor vehicle accident back on November 23rd.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Honeycutt?
Also, just want to extend my deepest sympathy to the Hamilton family. I can't imagine to lose two children at once. That was very tragic. And so I did commit, if there are ways of improving visibility at that area, I am more than happy to reach out to DOT and see what we can do to address that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Administrator?
Nothing today, sir.
Ms. Ham? Thank you. Thank everyone for being here tonight. Thanks for all the comments. And I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, and let's have a safe holiday coming forward. And we've got a good bit of work to do for the end of the year. Thank you all very much. Good night.